how to play your part. Budget wisely, save money, give, invest consistently, and understand that true wealth takes time to build. If you do the right things with your money, you're going to open up God's going to open up doors and opportunities for you. And if you steward your current situation correctly, you are going to increase the probability of you being blessed with more. And so just being consistent in actions when it comes to our money that we know are in our best interest, and doing it consistently over time, and that will compound and accumulate, while also welcoming new opportunities and new blessings because of your obedience. Hi, I'm Justin Buonamo, and this is Wisdom is Wealth. Wisdom is Wealth is designed to give you guys practical insights, modern strategies, and even timeless philosophies around gaining wisdom in your life. The wiser we get, the wealthier we will become. This podcast really is inspired by the book of Proverbs in the Bible, which was written by King Solomon, who prayed to God for wisdom, and as a byproduct became the wealthiest person to ever live. If he was still alive today in present day, he'd be worth $1.3 trillion with a T. Not because he prayed for wealth, but he prayed to God to give him wisdom. And as he grew wiser, as a byproduct, he grew wealthier, particularly financially, but not just stopping there, in every facet of his life. And in my own life, I have realized that the wealthier I become, it's truthfully just because I have become wiser in life. I'm gonna bring on guests that are incredibly successful, incredibly amazing human beings, and have an amazing financial wealth that they've grown for themselves. And they're gonna share wisdom on their life experience in totality, in hopes that something becomes valuable for you to implement in your process, in your life, and in your journey, and see how wisdom truthfully is wealth. Welcome back to another episode of Wisdom is Wealth. Today we have one of my favorite topics to talk about, a topic that I call patient persistence, or being persistently patient. And so this is a topic, or more so a phrase, that I coined a couple of years ago, talking to a client who was just super ambitious, but at the same point was being put in a spot in her business and her finances where God was like, I think we're trying to move too fast. I think we're trying to accomplish too fast. I think we're trying to go on your schedule, not mine. And so I'm going to break down a little bit of my definition of this topic here in a moment, but I want to give you maybe a practical example. And so before I was the owner and CEO of my company, JFF, or Journey to Financial Freedom, I worked at Johns Hopkins on the business side of healthcare, right? Ran the hospitals from a business standpoint. And so my first job, fresh out of grad school, I was 24 years old, and very, very ambitious time of my life. And in the professional world, right, it takes time to climb the corporate ladder. And in this particular job I was in the first place, I was lucky to be in it in the first place. I was very young and inexperienced. Actually, by inexperienced, I mean had zero experience, fresh out of grad school, and I was very fortunate and grateful to be hired into this position. But at the same point, 6 months goes by, and I wanted to be the CEO of Johns Hopkins already. And I was pissed off that I'm not climbing the ladder and getting promoted, getting other opportunities. And, I just had to be patient in the moment. And though I was high achieving and ambitious and working really hard and accomplishing a lot, I think, in the role and proving myself, there's just a certain way of life, particularly in the corporate world, where you can only get promoted so fast, especially in such a big pond like Johns Hopkins. And so I learned to be patient, right? To just play my part, keep showing up every day, not be too tied to the results, but every day I was dished an opportunity, make the best of it, and then just worry about the next opportunity as it came across my desk. If not, pursue it. And at the same time, be patient, right? Know that things were going to work out, that I was going to get promoted, that I was going to get more opportunities. And 2 years later, got an incredible promotion, which I stayed in this role for about 2.5 years, which was a huge key component of me attaining the experience that I needed to be able to start my own company and go out on my own. And so just a little, I think, easy example just to show the patient persistence, where sometimes as ambitious people, we get impatient with the results that we're seeing and the path that we're on. But at the end of the day, it's actually in our best interest to sometimes surrender to the timing in a healthy way. I'm not saying kick your feet up and do nothing, but what's that healthy balance of being ambitious and having goals while also being faithful and surrendering to the timing in the process, right? So the persistence would be set goals, work hard, go above and beyond, right? Do the things that you truthfully feel God is calling you to do. when it comes to going out and achieving. I'm a big fan of having goals, because I'm a big believer, and you get what you focus on, right? Which can be digested and applied many different ways. But one way is, if you have goals and you're focusing on them, then you're significantly increase the chance of doing what? Achieving those goals, because you get what you focus on. But at the same time, right, we have to surrender to the timing, right? We have to be patient, because we can sow seeds, but the result of the harvest is up to God. And so the patience being trusting God and his timing, right? Knowing that everything is working out, and that if things are taking longer than that you like, and you truthfully believe that you're playing your part, then all God is doing is developing your character in the waiting, in the tension, and maybe the frustration with the timing. And so I wanted to define those, right? The patience and the persistence. And some would say the persistence is the masculinity side of things, right? The doing. Let me have plans. Let me go out and play my part. And the patience is the feminine side of things. Let me surrender to the timing of this. Let me surrender to the results, right? And I'll give you an example. Our part is to use our gifts and take faithful action. God's part is the results, the opportunities, the outcomes. And so recently I was doing a virtual wealth building workshop where we invested a lot of time and money into an ad strategy, right? And even utilizing our own in-house resources to help us develop a marketing plan, and obviously the ability to be able to fulfill the event once people signed up and showed up. And so as I was prepping for it, I was doing my slides, putting some information in there, get really excited about what I was going to teach. My mind went to the results. Like, all right, we need to make X amount of sales for X amount of money and make X amount of results. And I heard God whisper to me, he was like, leave that to me. That's for me. That's my part. Let me worry about the results. Why don't you get back to the slides? Why don't you get back to impacting people's lives as best as you possibly can through the slides, the presentation, and the overall event that you throw? Why don't you go the extra mile with just serving people, utilizing your skills, your gifts? And let me handle the results. Let me handle the opportunities. Let me handle the outcome. And just the sense of peace that came over me was incredible. It made so much sense. This topic here, the patient persistence. It was like, just get back to using your gifts. That's our part. God's part is to worry about the results, the outcome. Doesn't mean that we can't be focused on them and have goals for the outcome, right? But we need to trust that those results are already ours as long as we play our part and have obedience. And so be obedient to what God is calling us to do. Yes, the surrender part, but also the stepping up and taking faithful action, utilizing your gifts. Our gifts bring us closer to God, right? But only when we utilize them, not when we store them, not when we shy away from them, not when we hide them. Our gifts bring us closer to God, and that's our part. And so it's just that healthy balance of going out and playing your part, like I constantly talk about, while trusting God's timing and being patient. And so 2 traps to avoid here. 1, impatience, right? Forcing things, doing things that are out of alignment. Like, I want to make $10 million by next year, right? And you end up forcing those things. You end up doing things that you wouldn't naturally do, that God probably isn't calling you to do. I've got my own personal example. One of my biggest goals, right, when I started my financial journey, when I was younger, and even getting into business, was to buy my dream house. I talk about it all the time. I draw pictures of it all the time. Constantly looking on Pinterest and Instagram, sending my wife TikToks of houses, always on Zillow. Right? Just borderline obsession with it. And topic for a different day, like the motives behind it. Some of them good, some of them not. I don't want the tags on it, but some motives behind that goal that were bringing me closer to God, and other ones that weren't. Right. But anyways, as I'm going through that goal, I found myself trying to force the outcome, trying to force us to buy a house that we didn't need way faster than we probably should have, and just had this physical feeling while looking at these homes, this one in particular, that it just felt off, right? But so many things on my ego, right? The enemy that was telling me to do it, telling me to force it, like, oh my gosh, your dad's going to be so proud of you if you buy this house. People are going to think you're cool if you buy this house. People are going to accept you and love you, right? People are going to really think that you're a success. You're going to get validation from other people, right? You'll be accepted by other people if you buy this house, right? And that's my biggest thing with my ego. Thinks rejection is death, right? So I try to avoid rejection at all costs. And old versions of me thought that I got people's acceptance from accolades, accomplishments, and achievements. A home being a great representation of one of those. And so I think I was like 28 years old and I was touring this house that I had no business touring, right? I mean, I don't know if that's actually fully true because I'm touring it and, we got through the lending process and everything looked okay, but something just felt off. It was a house that was way beyond our means, right? Way more space than we needed, and actually was built in the 1800s. And so there was a lot of beauty behind it. There was a lot of things that would have been cool to accomplish by owning this house, right? But it just was a house that we did not have any business getting into, especially at that age. And it felt off. I had this physical feeling the entire time, right? They just felt off. And thankfully, we got to the end and we were the final two bidders, if you will, that were putting in offers. And thankfully, we were not the ones that got picked. Because I always say life makes sense looking backwards. And looking backwards, I could see why God did not give us that house, did not put us into that home. And instead, the one that I'm sitting in right now was part of our destiny and what God's plan, what God had plans for us in regards to our dream house, as the big goal was. And so point of what I'm saying here is I almost put myself into excuse my language, a pretty shitty situation, right? With a massive house, extremely expensive, a lot of upkeep needed, way more than I could have handled because I was trying to force a goal on a time frame that my ego and the enemy were trying to get me to act on, right? Instead, I stayed patient, and 2 years later, the home that I'm sitting in, which is 10 times better in many different ways, popped up, and my family will now probably hopefully be here for forever. My daughter just turned 1 year old today, and the other day I was leaning on her door frame of her bedroom, just like, man, I can't believe I'm gonna be leaning up against this door frame for the next 18 years, just talking to this little girl about her life. And then John Luca, who's on the way, which is our baby boy due in May. And it just feels right here. This feels like our forever. There's just this particular feeling about this house. So I guess the long-winded answer to say, one of the traps is impatience. You're trying to force some of your big goals to happen faster, right? And it's not God, right? That's pulling you further away from God. It's not. A lot of times when you're trying to force things to happen faster on your clock and not God's speed, obviously that's not God promoting that time frame, and it's a trap. And so when it comes to the timing of things, right, we have to trust that God has our best interest in mind when it comes to the time. And if we keep putting one foot in front of the other, the time's going to pass either way. If we're playing our part, the goals and the outcomes that God has for our life will come to fruition in his time frame. And when it does, life only makes sense looking backwards. You're going to look backwards and be like, wow, I'm so happy, right, that God gave me these things in the time frame that he did and not on my clock, right? And so the other trap is being passive, hearing this message and being like, you know what? Let me cancel all my meetings for today. I'm not going to set an alarm for tomorrow. I'm not going to be disciplined and consistent in the things that I know I need to do, right? That's not what I'm saying now. That'd be swinging the pendulum the whole other way, right? And so I always use the analogy, I think people find it funny. I'm like, you can't just kick your feet up on the couch and eat Cheetos all day and expect God to take care of the rest, right? You can't also wait around for the perfect moment or a miracle. You have to go out and take faithful action. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I was giving them the example of God's job is the second step, ours is the first step, but you're never able to take a second step or see the second step until you take the first one, right? The first step is our job, faithful action, right? Approaching the throne with boldness, right? Going out and taking faithful action, right? And that usually doesn't mean you're acting in the perfect moment or there's 100% certainty, right? It means you're acting out of faith, which a lot of times feels uncomfortable, right? Stretching you a little bit. Once you take that step, then God can reveal the second step, right? His part. But until you take your step and play your part, God can't play his part. And so I think just understanding those traps, the impatience and the passiveness, right? You can't be impatient, but at the same time, we can't just sit around and do nothing and wait for a miracle, right? And so I want to apply this to money a little bit to make it practical here on the financial side of things. And so how to play your part. Budget wisely. Save money. Give. Invest consistently. And understand that true wealth takes time to build. I'm not saying that you have to wait till you're 65 to retire and, that the the traditional way, if you will, of building wealth, which is still, there's a ton of value in there. I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong if you're listening to this, waiting till you're 65 to retire or later, right? But what I'm saying is that when I say wealth takes time to build, I also don't mean it has to take, decades to build. If you do the right things with your money, you're going to open up, God's going to open up doors and opportunities for you. And if you steward your current situation correctly, you are going to increase the probability of you being blessed with more. So things can happen fast-ish, if you will, when it comes to building wealth. But true wealth over time takes time. There's a lot of things that go into it, right? When it comes to, budgeting consistently, day in and day out. Kind of like dieting, right? If you diet 1 day a week compared to 7 days a week, which one's going to get you better results? Probably the 7 days a week. If you work out 2 days a week compared to 5 days a week, which one's going to get you better results? Probably the 5 days a week. And so just being consistent in actions when it comes to our money that we know are in our best interest, and doing it consistently over time, and that will compound and accumulate, while also welcoming new opportunities and new blessings because of your obedience. And so that's our part right there. And there's no get-rich-quick schemes, and there's no shortcuts either when it comes to finances. I tell my clients all the time, don't get me wrong, we will set you up with a plan to achieve your goals in the fastest, most efficient, and trustworthy way possible. But at the same time, there's no shortcuts, right? And you have to do the work. And a lot of times that work is the internal work. I can give you the best systems and strategies in the world, but you'll never outperform the belief that you have of something. And if you've got negative, limiting, scarce, and fearful thoughts around money, that's what's going to be your reality. And that takes time to work through. That takes grace to work through. That takes patience to work through. That takes strength to work through. Just sit there and ask yourselves, why am I the way I am? And why do I do the things that I do, particularly with money? That's a long road. It's a long road to dig into that, right? And it takes time. True transformation takes time and doesn't happen overnight. And so just understanding that when it comes to your money, right? Worry about being a good steward in every decision that you make, every dollar that you're giving, every choice that you have. God gives us free will. Do your absolute best to be obedient and being a good steward of your money and doing things consistently over time that are helpful to you, your finances, and to everybody around you that are impacted by the way that you manage your money. I can feel God speaking through me right now and wants you to hear this message where that's your part to play right there. He'll take care of the rest. But we must surrender to his timing. Understand that he is working everything in our favor. And most times, the reason why he's delaying something is so he can develop your character to be an individual who can not only attract the life that you're looking for, but also be able to sustain it, scale it, and share it with other people in a very God-like way. I think about the goals that I have income-wise and business-wise. I've had this income goal in my head for years now. Right. And, the young, ambitious dog in me years ago, before I really kind of started my spiritual journey and healing and what I like to say, growing up a little bit, right? I look back and he used to get so frustrated, right, about why he wasn't hitting that income goal. And now looking back, I'm just like, thank you, God, for not giving me all of that money back then, right? Because I would have been a terrible steward of it. Yes, I would have saved it, invested, and budgeted, but I also would have taken the excess time, energy, and money that amount of money was giving me and buying me back, if you will, or supplying for me, and going and using it on things in full transparency that would not honor in God, was not going to make me a good husband, dad, friend, none of that, because my character was weak, it was blemished, and I'm still developing and transforming and growing. And your salvation journey is to the day you die. But at the same point, I've grown so much over the years to where looking back, it makes sense why I wasn't given that money, because God was developing my character to be an individual who can attract it, sustain it, scale it, steward it well, and share it with other people. And now I truthfully feel like I'm fully stepping in to that character, to that person that God refined me to be. As I mentioned in past podcasts, God uses refinement to mold his people into who he wants them to be, to answer the calling he has for their life. And so trust the timing and the tension that's in the timing, because that's what's developing your character. God is in the gray area. God is in the tension. God gives you your mountains as medicine. So a lot of times that mountain is the timing that you're not a fan of when it comes to you accomplishing some goals in life, financially or not. Trust the timing, play your part, and I promise you things will work out better than you could ever imagine. Let God's will be done. Let God's will be done, not ours. And so I hope this message was helpful. I got a little passionate there at the end, picking up some speed, and just want to leave you all with hopefully some breakthroughs and perspective shifts when it comes to being patiently persistent. Right? Persistence is being ambitious and taking faithful action, utilizing your gifts to make this world a better place and bring people closer to God. And being patient is trusting God with the results, the outcomes, and the timing. I love y'all. Share this message, download, comment, whatever platform you're on, show some love. And if you know somebody that would benefit from this, as always, share it with them, and we'll see you on the next episode.